as we get older, we tend to become a little more reflective on our life. Maybe it's just the practical issue of there's more behind us perhaps than there is ahead of us. And so we begin to process through our choices in the past, kind of how our life has played out over the past. As we get older, we tend to ask more questions, and that can be a really positive thing, I think, for a lot of us. When we were younger, we had a lot of clarity. We had a lot of certainty. We were full of answers. We were full of being definite and confident about things. Nothing quite like the clarity and confidence of a 20-year-old, right? You just know at that age. And then you live long enough to realize, maybe I have more questions than I have answers. Maybe there are more things that puzzle me than I have actually solved. Maybe I've experienced enough of life and I've seen other people's experiences to know that maybe my experience isn't everyone's experience. We find ourselves maybe later in life with more questions than answers, with more dilemmas that are unresolved. We aren't quite as confident even in the answers we once had as we get older. And I don't mean to imply that we don't have any answers or we aren't confident about anything as we get older. What often happens as we get older is those things we deeply believe, like those core truths to us, they get reinforced. Now, we are more confident in those core beliefs and core truths that we've held to all our life and that has sustained us through life. It's just that we've come to realize that not everything falls into the category of a core belief. And we come to realize that the way I answer some things maybe is not the way everyone answers those same things. The older we get, I think, the more life itself tends to confuse us. Again, we see the way the world plays out. We see tragedies, the heartbreak of other people. And we come at those with less of a, well, this is the reason why, or if only. We come at those experiences and those tragedies sometimes with more of a, I don't know. I'm not as certain maybe as I once was. Now, this process of reflection, of looking back, of questioning my answers and even questioning my questions, I agree that it doesn't happen for all of us, right? Some of us, the older we get, become more entrenched, become more calloused, become harsher to everything around us. But some of us, with the advantage of time, and I said a few weeks ago that time alone doesn't produce wisdom. But time can, if we allow it, give us perspective, and perspective can lead to wisdom. That the longer we live, the greater perspective we can have on life. And sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes that perspective in looking back on life brings regret. We look back on certain periods of our life and we wish we could change certain things. We wish we could go back to certain decisions and remake those decisions. Go back to certain forks in the road and take the left instead of the right. To stay straight instead of making a curve. If we could go back, we would change some things, and probably all of us have a little bit of that. If you live long enough, that's one of the aspects of living long enough, is that you gain some of those regrets. Right? We're all human. We're all imperfect. And if we're honest, we probably would all say, at least by the time you get to my age, we would all say, yeah, there are some things I wish I would have done differently. And at the same time, I realize not everybody's honest as they get older. Not everyone honestly says, yes, I made some mistakes. I should have done some things differently. Some people would say, you know what, I have no regrets. But if we ask the people closest to you, they would say, oh, you should have a few. We know a few that we could point out that should be regretful. We just get this new perspective as we get older. Solomon, which is the character we've been studying for some time now, if you're new with us today, Solomon has lived quite an incredible life. He's experienced extraordinary successes. He was the king of a nation, an international influence and leader, and yet at the same time, he made devastatingly bad decisions in his life. And those bad decisions are beginning to destroy everything he's built in his life. We talked about that last week. And this week we come closer to the end of his life. And the end of his life prompts a couple of questions for the reader, for the person who's studying this life. And I think there are two big questions that Solomon's life presents to us. The first question being, why did he make the decisions he made? If he was in the position he was in, if he had the wisdom to make different decisions, why did he make that decision? And does he ever, at some point in his life, kind of do a deep dive into himself to figure that out? Why did this happen? Why did I do the things that I did? And the answer to that question is yes, he actually does. He explores his inner self at the end of his life and the motivations that caused him to do the things that he did. And then the second question is, does he learn anything from his mistakes? As he reflects on them, as he gains perspective, as he looks back, as he unearths his motivations that caused him to do the things that he did, does he look back and say, if I had to do it again, I would have done it this way? And the answer to that question is yes as well. He comes to some conclusions about his own life. And we know this because Solomon left behind for us sort of a memoir of his inner life. It's not really biographical in the sense that it's not chronological. It doesn't take us through every circumstance and every decision that he made. But Solomon lays bare what was happening in his inner world for us to see, for us to learn from. You've probably played the thought experiment where someone asks you, if you could go back and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, what would it be? If you could go back to the day you were married and you could say something to that couple, what would you tell them? If you could go back to the day you got fired from your first job and you were so discouraged, what would you say to that person? We've all played some version of that game. If you could go back, if you could say one thing to your younger self, what would it be? None of us get to do that. We don't get to do that. Solomon doesn't get to do that, but he does the next best thing. He writes a memoir of his inner life and his inner questions for his kids to read, never knowing that you and I would be reading it thousands of years later because it serves the same purpose for all of us. In this book, it's the book of Ecclesiastes, by the way. We're gonna zip through Ecclesiastes today. If you want to follow along in your own Bible, go to the middle of your Bible in Psalms and take a right. And you'll hit Proverbs and then you'll hit Ecclesiastes. In this book, Solomon does a couple of things. Solomon shares his motivation for the choices he made. He's going to tell us, this is why I did what I did. We don't have to agree with his reasoning. We don't have to like his reasoning. But he opens his heart and says, this is what was going on in my life at this time. Second, Solomon shares his unanswered questions. We're not going to get into all of those, but if you read straight through the book of Ecclesiastes, you realize Solomon had more questions at the end of his life than he had answers. There were things he did not understand, could not make sense of. They did not add up to him. He unloads all of his unanswered questions in this book. And the third thing he does, Solomon gives us the one valuable truth he's discovered in his life. Those are the three things he does in Ecclesiastes. When he gets to the end, he gives us the one valuable truth that he discovered through all of the chaos of his life. And he doesn't give us 10 steps. He doesn't give us 5 principles. He says, there's one thing I've learned, and I want you to know this. Speaking to his children, now speaking to us, there is one thing through all of the chaos that I caused that I finally figured out. As often happens to someone who has made enormous mistakes in their life, life-shattering bad decisions in their life, Solomon comes across at the end of his life as jaded and cynical and harsh and a bit of a get-off-my-lawn type of guy, which is often what happens when we continually make a series of bad decisions in our life. This is where we find Solomon when he begins to open his heart to us. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. We're going to start in verse 1. Don't worry, we're not reading the whole book. We're just going to start in verse 1:1. It reads, the words of the teacher. Solomon, at the end of his life, goes third person on us. Like he speaks about himself in third person and calls himself the teacher or the speaker. All throughout this book, he says, the speaker says, the teacher says. It just means the person who's doing the speaking. The teacher, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. I told you he was in a bad mood, right? He's cranky. He's jaded. And he wants to get our attention. He wants to get your attention. He wanted to get his kids' attention. You've been in the same place. If you're a parent, you don't want your kids to make the same mistakes you've made, and you want to get their attention. And the way he gets our attention is by saying, look, everything's meaningless. He doesn't welcome us into his book. He doesn't say, hey, thanks for reading. We're going to take a little journey together. I'm going to tell you some things about myself. Right out of the gate, he yells at us, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What does he mean? Here's what I think he means. As I've studied this book, it's simply this. If we look for meaning in this world alone, we will be disappointed. That's what he means by meaningless. The pursuits of this world will leave you unfulfilled. That thing that you're trying to fill in your heart, in your soul, if you try to fill it up with stuff in this life, you are going to be disappointed because it has no lasting value. It has no substance to it. It doesn't endure. It's like trying to catch fog. It was a little foggy this morning driving in. Anybody try to catch some and bring it with you? You put some in your pocket on the way in. You get some in a jar. What happens 5 seconds later? You can grab all you want to fog, and as soon as you open your hands, there's nothing there. He even uses this phrase, it's a chasing after the wind. That's another way he describes this life. It's a chasing after the wind. You're always trying to catch something you can't catch. You think that all of these things are going to make you fulfilled. They're going to give you some purpose in life. And what happens is you reach for it and grab for it, and it's gone. It doesn't do what you think it was going to do. We live in a world where we constantly get the message, try me, pick me, buy me, sign me up, drink me, take me, pursue me, and I'll make you happy. I'll make you happy. I'll make all your dreams come true. And maybe it does for a little while. Maybe it does for just a little while. There is some sense of happiness, but as time passes by, you realize it was fog in your hands. That thing that you thought was going to be the thing for you, make everything make sense, give you purpose and meaning and fulfillment in life, and you wake up one day and it's gone. It didn't do that for you. You got to the end of it and there was nothing left and you felt empty. And not only did you feel empty, you looked back and you realized how much time you had wasted going after that thing that didn't do what it was promised. How much money you spent, how much emotion you gave to that thing. And at the end, when it all washes out, it gave you nothing of significance. After this shocking start, Solomon explains how for his whole life he was on this treadmill of trying to find something that mattered, trying to give his life meaning, trying to find purpose, and he tried everything. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1, he starts with pleasure. Read just a verse for you. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. I just tried to find pleasure wherever I could find it. Right after that, he says he tried laughter, wine, and what he calls folly. In other words, I just tried having a good time. I just tried to be happy. I tried to have a good time. I tried to pursue anything that I thought would bring a sense of joy, a sense of pleasure, a sense of happiness. And at the end of it, I was empty. He tried projects. I'm going to build some buildings. I'm going to make some gardens. I'm going to create a park somewhere. I'm going to plant a vineyard. Didn't do it. He tried to amass more stuff, herds and flocks and gold and silver. He tried to find meaning in wisdom itself. I just want to know more. I want to discover more. I want to get smarter than everybody else. Didn't do it for him. He tried to find meaning in his work. I just want to work harder. I want to be more successful. I want to rise up. Chapter 4, he tries to find fulfillment in advancement. He thinks, okay, well, maybe if you just raise up to higher and higher positions, maybe somebody who started in a low position and ended up in a high position, maybe that would be meaningful. And it wasn't. The fulfillment, the purpose just didn't last. Chapter 5, he tries riches. I just want to get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And it didn't work. Nothing worked. And at the end of all that trying and hoping and trying to gain, he was frustrated because he felt like his life didn't matter. In this memoir, in this book, the curtain gets pulled back, and we see what's behind the king we've been reading about. Behind this wise and successful person, behind this diplomat and ruler and leader was a man desperate to have meaning in his life. Desperate to find some sense of fulfillment. Desperate to matter. And we would look at Solomon's life. Any of us would look at Solomon's life. And we would think, how can you not be fulfilled? You have everything. You are the king. You have position and power. You have a title. People do whatever you say. People serve you day after day after day. Which reminds us, we so often look at people and don't know what's going on behind their eyes, deep in their heart. It can give us a little bit of sympathy for that person who acts like they have it all together. Nothing bothers them. They have no insecurities whatsoever. That person who seems so successful, who seems to have it all together, when sometimes behind all of the facade is a person just desperate for meaning, desperate for fulfillment, desperate to matter. We would say to Solomon, how? With all of your power, with all of your influence, with all of your successes, all the women that are in your life, all the riches that are in your life. What do you mean you didn't feel fulfilled? And Solomon comes to the end of his life and said, it just didn't do it. All of those things that I thought would fill me up, they just didn't. This idea of meaningless, this chasing after the wind, this fog idea is such a beautiful example because all of the time people look at things that they think will make them matter and it's fog. And if they step out on it, they're going to sink. So it's like putting our hope, putting our trust in a paper bridge. You can paint the paper to look like wood. You can paint the paper to look like concrete. You can paint the paper to look like steel. But if you step out on it, it's going to give way. And for so many people, they're They're pursuing this and they're pursuing that, and it's simply one paper bridge after another, and none of it will hold them up. And yet they keep looking. Well, maybe the next thing. Well, maybe the next thing. Well, maybe this will do it. We all know this to be true. Believing something has weight that does not have leads to regret and frustration. Believing this is solid. This is going to support me. This is going to help me move forward. And then it gives way. It leads to frustration. It leads to regret. Always thinking the next thing is going to be the real thing leads to utter frustration. Now look, we're all like Solomon. We all want to matter. We want to find meaning. We want to have purpose. And we are tempted, just like Solomon, to seek that purpose in anything and everything we can find. And by the way, there was nothing wrong with any of the things that he pursued. Sometimes there were wrong things in the way he pursued them, but there's nothing wrong with pleasure. There's nothing wrong with good work. There's nothing wrong with achievement or accomplishment. There's nothing wrong with being grateful for the material possessions that you have. There was nothing wrong with any of the specific pursuits that Solomon went after. The problem was those pursuits became first in his life. This is where perspective comes in. In order to have the right perspective, we must keep good things in their proper place behind the greatest thing. We must keep good things in their proper place, their proper perspective, below the greatest thing, the greatest pursuit. And very often in life, that gets switched around. The greatest thing gets bumped down to a lower priority so that I can pursue things that were meant to be good, but not meant to sustain my whole life. Not meant to give meaning and fulfillment to my whole life. You see, all of the good things in your life, the good relationships, the times of joy and happiness, the material possessions, all of the good things are intended to add to and increase the joy of a meaningful life, but they aren't intended to be the ultimate source of meaning in your life. All of those things that you enjoy, that you love, that you want to be a part of your life, they're intended to add to the joy that God wants for your life. They're just not intended to be the central source of meaning and joy. And now, so what is that? What is that central core meaning, matter, fulfillment that will sustain you? The very end of Ecclesiastes, after sharing all of his frustrations and all of his failures and all of his disappointments, Solomon put it like this. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Now, all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. And I know you wanted it to be more complicated than that, didn't you? You wanted it to be more mystical. Like some deep, profound spiritual thing that few people have figured out. And you figured it out. You found it. You wanted it to somehow be more interesting than that. You wanted it to rhyme, maybe. You wanted a nice phrase you could put on a t-shirt that everybody would go, wow, where did you discover that? And Solomon, after pursuing everything he could possibly pursue in order to find meaning, he says, you know what I found? I'm at the end of my life. My day's coming to an end. It's really simple. If I could go back and talk to 20-year-old Solomon as he was being crowned king, you know what I would tell that guy? I would say, man, you need to honor God in your life. And you need to obey his commands. And these other things are going to work themselves out. Like he'll give you wisdom. He's going to protect. He's going to look out for you. He's going to add things to your life that are going to be great. But if you ever get it confused, if you get you ahead of God, if you get your fulfillment ahead of following God, if you get you discovering meaning ahead of following God's commands, that's when you're going to wreck everything. We want it to be complicated. We want it to be mysterious. And Solomon, after wrecking his life that would eventually wreck the whole nation, he says, I discovered it really was simple the whole time. If I had just obeyed God, if I had just listened. Jesus makes this same point in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, one of his most well-known sayings. Jesus says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Like all those other things you want, all those other things you feel like you need, God's going to give you enough of that in this life. If you just put him first. If you just really seek after him with your whole heart, if honoring him, revering him, worshiping him, and obeying him will just become central to your life, if you will live that life, and he's going to give you plenty of pleasure and plenty of joy and enough success that to fill up that part of you. He's going to surround you with the things that you need in this life if you'll just keep putting him first. When should we do this? When should this fearing God, obeying God start to us? When should we lock into this? This was Solomon's advice at the beginning of chapter 12. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, because if you can establish this relationship of obeying him and drawing near to him and worshiping him in your youth, when life really gets hard, you're going to have a foundation to build on. I mean, Solomon knows, he's lived long enough, he's foreshadowing. Look, life often gets harder the older you get. You know, what do they say? Getting old isn't for sissies or something like that? A heartache follows it. The rest of chapter 12, and we don't have time to go through all of it, but he gives this extended, symbolic, metaphorical description of old age. And you can figure most of it out. Like if you read through it, you can figure most of it out. He's talking about, these are some of the aches and pains of getting older. Your back hurts more than it's ever hurt before. Your legs, you lay down at night and they're just hurting. Those sort, you don't have as many teeth. That's one of his metaphors there. Don't raise your hand, but we don't hear quite as well. Right? Our vision gets dim. We don't see quite as well. Our fears rise. Right? Because we don't feel as stable, we don't feel as confident in our abilities, and then as we get older, if we live long enough, as we get older, we're a little more apprehensive. Don't sleep well. He says that like even a cricket will wake you up, or something like that. Anybody else? You know, but me, going to the bathroom a lot at night. Yeah, like I'm up, I'm down, I'm up. Solomon says these things are coming. These things are coming. You know when you need to like lock your relationship with God in? It's not at that point. You're going to need it at that point. It's right now in your youth. This image that he gives, and I know a lot of you care for older parents, and this image that he gives, as I was thinking about it this week, it reminds us that we reach a certain age and our world starts getting smaller. We can't go. There aren't as many people who come visit. We get a little more isolated later in life. And here's just what I'm proposing. Solomon doesn't say this specifically, Here's something to think about. A day is coming when we will spend increasing amount of time alone with our thoughts. It's just coming if you live long enough. You're going to spend increasing amounts of time alone with your thoughts. Do we want to be happy or do we want to be haunted during those days? And it's just me. When I'm reminiscing, when I'm reflecting, what do I want the dominant emotion to be looking back? I want to be happy or I want to be haunted? Read the life of Solomon. Friends, he was haunted at the end of his life. He was haunted by the terrible decisions that he's made. And look, all of us are human. All of us are imperfect. There's going to be some mix of happy and haunted for all of us. That's just kind of the way it's going to go at the end. But where do you want the scale to tip? You want the scale to tip towards, I didn't do everything perfect, but man, I tried to follow God, and God was faithful, and I grew in my faith, and I got stronger in my faith. I'm grateful for what God did in my life. I mean, a day's coming where, as I said earlier, there's going to be a lot more behind than there is ahead, right? I've crossed over the Rubicon, right? I've crossed that chasm. You know, I'm 56. Hey, I could be 112. Who knows? You know, modern medicine, 60 is the new 30. You know, all that stuff we say, try to make ourselves feel better about. No, I'm on the second half side like a lot of you. I'm on the second half side. There's more behind me than's ahead of me. How do you want to feel when you get to that point and most of it's behind? In the days of your youth, the answer to that question is in your hands. And Solomon would say, do it right now. Do it right now. And remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Some of you were in it. A few of you were in it. We studied through the book of Ecclesiastes years ago here at Journey in like a Sunday night Bible study. We just kind of went through the book of Ecclesiastes. Took a long time. At this point in the study, I made a statement that I intended to be encouraging, and not everybody in the group thought it was encouraging. So I'm going to give it to you, and I'm just going to say up front, I mean this to be encouraging. When Solomon says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, one of the ways to apply that statement is, today you are as young as you are ever going to be the rest of your life. You're as young as you're ever going to be. Now, maybe you had some surgery recently. Maybe you're fighting an illness. Maybe you're going to get healthier than today. Maybe that's going to happen for some of us. You're going to be a little healthier in the future. You're not going to be any younger. The numbers only go one way. The numbers just go up. When Solomon says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, if you're my age or older, I challenge you, don't say that's a verse for the 16-year-olds. No, you're as young as you're ever going to be today. Remember God today, right now. Pour into your relationship with God today. Another thought, and I got to wrap up. Related to that, today, you are deciding what the future you is going to think about the present you. Did you follow that? Today, the choices you're making today, no matter what age you are, 12, 112, no matter what age you are, today, the choices that you're making, the decisions that you're making are determining what the future you is going to look back and think about the present you. What do you want the future you to look back and think about the you of today? Solomon would say, fear God. Give your whole self to Him. Obey His commands. I know it sounds simple. I know it sounds like, we're in church, pastor's supposed to say it. I know, it sounds like all of that. And the wisest man who ever lived got to the end of his life and says, this is the one thing I wish I would have done. This is the one thing. If I could go back, this is the one thing I would say to myself, I'd say to my kids, I'll say to anybody who listens, follow God. If I stop thinking that your fulfillment is somewhere else out there other than in God. Last word that should have been a lot longer, but I'm going to give it to you and we're going to be done. Solomon as a king foreshadows another king who was to come, as they all do. The Old Testament has imperfect models, imperfect foreshadowing of a perfect model that was to come. Solomon, in all of his wisdom and leadership ability, in all of his depth of understanding, foreshadows that another king was one day going to come. And in all the ways that Solomon failed, this king would not fail. Jesus was the lived out wisdom of God. He is the wisdom of God. Any wisdom not based in Jesus will never hold up. It is not true wisdom. And we have this very imperfect figure in the Old Testament to remind us a perfect figure would come who would live in wisdom. And he would not build buildings and he would not build himself a temple. He would serve and he would love and he would live out the wisdom of God. If you want wisdom in your life, don't pursue Solomon. Learn from Solomon. Don't pursue somebody else, some other human. Learn from them. Gain what you can from them. If you want wisdom, pursue Jesus. Because he is the very wisdom lived out in front of us. God, we ask that you help us in the season of our life, whatever that season may be. We have middle school students and high school students, and we have people right in the middle of their careers. We have people in retirement and older age. Wherever we are, we want to live in wisdom. We want to walk in wisdom. We want to get to the end of our days and say, God, I gave it to you. I lived for you. I wasn't perfect at it. I do have some regrets at the end, but I'm going to keep on obeying you. I'm going to fear you. I'm going to reverence you. I'm going to worship you. Remind us that every day we are choosing how the future you, the future us, will ultimately see the present us. And let us walk in faith. In Jesus' name, amen.